Welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Service Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. My name is Councillor Rob Baillieu and I chair this committee. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left at the horseshoe table in the council chamber are Councillors Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillors Shimmer Abuki and Councillor Felicity Sinfield. On the opposite side, we have Councillor Victor Franco, our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, Councillor Sophie Tawney, our Mayor, Councillor John Friend Pereira and Councillor Chris Pattis. I also acknowledge our CEO, Mr. Philip Storer to my right, and our Coordinator Governance, Mr. Brian Weed to my left. There are other officers in attendance tonight and they will be introduced as they present their reports. The purpose of the Service Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and Council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer. I will then call you one by one to come forward and address Council. I'll ask speakers to sit at the top of the horseshoe table and I will invite those against the officer's recommendations to speak first, followed by those in favour. When making a submission, you're requested to present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternative approach which will satisfy your concerns. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues. There is a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker and that includes councillors. As chairperson, I reserve the right to vary that. At the 2.5 minute mark, I will ring a bell which will indicate you have 30 seconds remaining and you need to conclude your presentation. After you've spoken, please remain at the table while I ask if any councillors have a question for you. For those in the gallery this evening, I would like to take the opportunity to remind you to extend due courtesy and respect to each other and the committee as a whole. This includes remaining quiet while others are addressing the meeting and not disrupting the decision-making process of the committee. And just to finish, I'd like to encourage all submitters, officers and councillors to speak directly into the microphone. This will ensure that everyone can clearly hear the discussion. We will now move to apologies. Mr. Wee, are there any apologies for this evening?
Through you, Chair. This evening, Councillor Nolden and Councillor Galt are apologies.
We'll now move to the adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Service Delegated Committee meeting held on the 11th of August and 18th of August 2025. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes? Councillor Abuki.
Happy to adopt the minutes.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Happy to second, thanks, Chair.
Is anyone opposed? There is none. I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We'll now move to declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for the matters on the agenda tonight? There are none. Before we move to the reports on the agenda tonight, I would like to seek the consent of Council under Rule 19.2 to move the Burundara exhibition policy on the agenda to the last item. I do have a few questions about that policy, but I'm keen to allow community members here tonight for item 8.3 Reserve Road to be able to return home, noting it may be getting close to bedtime for some of our younger audience members. Councillors, is anyone willing to move a motion in support of that? Councillor Tawney.
Happy to move that motion.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Very happy to second, thank you.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? There is none. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We will now move to item 4.2. Submission to the Transport Compliance and Miscellaneous Conduct on Public Transport Regulations 2025. This report will be presented by Jim Hondrakis, our Manager of Traffic and Transport.
Daniel Freer.
Daniel Freer, our Director of Open Space, Places and Spaces.
Thank you, Chair. Claire Davey will be assisting me in the presentation of this item.
Thank you, councillors and chair, through you. Apologies, I was expecting to not be called upon right now, but that is okay. We are prepared. The purpose of the report today is to seek endorsement and adoption of a submission to the Victorian Government's proposed changes to the Transport, Compliance and Miscellaneous Conduct on Public Transport Regulations 2025. I'll just refer to them as the regulations from here on in to save time. So the Department of Transport and Planning own the regulations, and they're set to sunset on the 22nd of December this year. So the DTP need to complete a thorough review of the regulations to make sure that they're fit for purpose for the modern transport system and all the different transport modes that we have within that system, including e-bikes, e-scooters and other e-transportation devices. The regulations proposed are supported by a regulatory impact statement, and the statement considers three different options. The option one is to remake the regulations without substantial changes, so just technical updates only. Option two is to remake the regulations with amendments to increase safety and accessibility. Option three is to remake them to increase safety, accessibility, and to then place further restrictions on e or electronic transportation devices. There has been a fair amount of community conversation about this. Bicycle Network picked this up and they ran with the headline of e-bikes are banned on trains, which is a neat headline. It does miss some of the nuance. The community consultation period closed for this on the 18th of August, which wasn't sufficient time for a report to be brought to council, so the draft submission was presented to the department, noting it was draft and hadn't been considered by council yet. And it would be shared, the endorsed one would be shared with council, with DTP after council had considered it. So the draft submission considers each of the three options presented in the RIS, and as well as the multi-criteria analysis that supports the department's preferred option, which is option three, the total ban. Our submission supports an amended option two, which would see the carriage of e-bikes permitted on all public transport modes in Victoria, both metropolitan, train, tram and bus modes, as well as the V-Line, train, bus and coaches. The amendment that we proposed in the submission was to allow the carriage of e-scooters if folded at all times. E-scooters are a really neat first and last kilometre transport mode for people that need to rely on public transport and need a cheaper alternative to driving and parking. The option two with the amendment responds well, we believe, to the issue at hand being the thermal runaway fires associated with the lithium-ion batteries. So there was an unfortunate fire on a train between Box Hill and Union Station caused by one of the Franken bikes, one of the aftermarket conversion bicycles. It's a very difficult situation for the MTM staff to respond to, as well as the Fire Rescue Victoria services to respond to. The draft submission also seeks to have the Commonwealth Government lead the harmonisation of legislation applicable to these e-devices. At the moment, it's all in a bit of a state of disarray, I guess, with different states considering different e-bikes legal and others not. It also requests for emergency services and all public transport franchisees, Metro, the new Yarra trams and others, the bus operators, to develop and update their emergency service response protocols. There was some gaps in the MTM protocols in particular in this instance. I'll leave it there. Very happy to take questions from councillors, and thank you for your time.
There are no public submissions on this matter tonight, so we'll move directly to any questions of officers from councillors? Councillors, are there any questions for the officers? Councillor Sinfield.
No question, but happy to move a motion when the time is right.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Just one question for Ms Davies. Thank you for the presentation. I can see there's a lot of detail gone into it. Are you able to elaborate why there would be increased concern with regard to the e-scooters in particular on public transport and in particular in trains? And are you aware there was a fire incident that you could elaborate on?
I'm not necessarily aware of any particular incidents recently with e-scooters, and I don't necessarily understand why they're proposing to ban e-scooters on trains, trams, buses and coaches. Part of it might stem from the fact that the V-Line coaches in particular have the luggage hold, so you put luggage including e-scooters and e-bikes, regular scooters into the hold, so if something does happen it might not be necessarily immediately visible. But that's probably the only thing I can think of. The requirement to fold them would mean that it creates less of an accessibility issue, so it does mean that they take up less space on public transport services.
Councillor Tawney.
Thank you, and a very comprehensive report. Thank you for that. I just wanted to understand about the difference between a standard bike and the augmented or large style, and whether that was easy enough for public transport staff to say straight away, yeah, that's that, and that's a standard one.
Yeah, certainly, and through you, Chair, it is easy enough to recognise an aftermarket conversion bike or a commercial e-bike. If you just have a look around the city, the food delivery bicycles tend to be those style of bikes. Often they have a throttle on the handle, sometimes the pedals aren't even connected to the drivetrain, and just assessing, I mean, we can't, and it's, you need specialist equipment, but assessing the output from the battery as well is one way of recognising it, but they're very, very noticeable. They look sometimes like motorbikes as well, a little bit kind of slimline motorbikes, but yeah, very noticeable, very recognisable, easy
So
to.
conceivably it could be, sorry, through you, Chair, conceivably it could be that a simple training identification kind of program for staff to understand that.
Yeah, and we would expect that the state and the franchisees would train their staff to recognise, what a aftermarket conversion bike and a legal bike is.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Ms Davey. I just wanted to understand commercial e-bikes and why they were a higher risk. Is that because they're a particular quality, or we know the bulk where, you know?
Commercial e-bikes in this instance are the ones, again, that the food delivery riders tend to use. They generally have larger capacity batteries, which is one of the risks, one of the kind of elevated risk issues when it comes to these sorts of fires. They tend to be poorly maintained, poorly stored, overcharged. They kind of tick every single box of the risk category for a fire of the type that comes from those lithium-ion batteries. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Fren Pereira.
Thank you, Chair, and to you two officers. While I understand this is a state government-led consultation, there's obviously some issues with the regulation of e-bikes and e-mobility devices. Could you briefly outline the role that the federal government might be able to play in this area?
Certainly, and it's not necessarily one I'm too familiar with. We tend to play in the local and the state government field. But the Commonwealth Government does have carriage of the Road Vehicle Standards Act, which does then define what for a want of a better term, street legal car or bicycle and e-bicycle is. So they do have the responsibility across the Commonwealth to define exactly what is an e-bike, and as noted in the report, there is some discrepancy between Victoria and New South Wales about what an e-bike actually is. So they do have a significant role in the definition, and they do also control imports to the country. So they, again, have that, that facet of control around what comes in.
Councillors, are there any final questions for officers? There are none. I note that Councillor Sinfield foreshadowed a motion. I'm now in search of a motion. Councillor Sinfield, do you still have a motion?
Yes, the officer's recommendation, please.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Happy to second.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed?
I am.
Councillor Friend Pereira?
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion before it goes to a vote.
Do you have a seconder? What is the amendment? Correction.
The amendment is to do with the response that we just received from officers with regards to the role of federal government, and it's to include a third item in the recommendation, from the recommendations, that we actually engage the Commonwealth government in this process as well.
Councillor Sinfield, are you happy to accept this amendment?
If I can have a moment to read it. Chair, no, I'm not prepared to accept or adopt that as my motion. There are too many variables in there that I don't know the perhaps unintended consequences of them without being briefed.
In that case, Councillor Friend Pereira, do you have a seconder? Councillor Tawney?
Happy to second that, Chair.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? There is. Councillor Friend Pereira, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you. As the officers have highlighted, there's already a diffuse approach to this emerging vehicle standard within states and territories. In 2001, the Commonwealth government removed the federal importation controls that they have on, or had on this type of vehicle. And also the EN 15195 standards, which is an EU standard that has been modified to suit the Australian conditions, was removed as well, and it was removed from the Road Vehicle Standards Act. This isn't a situation that we're going to be able to solve by ourselves in Victoria. We need a coordinated approach. There will be nothing to stop somebody bringing their EV bike from New South Wales, from Queensland, from Tasmania, across the border, or indeed to control the continuous input into the market of dodgy bikes. This is a federal responsibility. The officers' reports speak to this in the section of the report, which was the additional items to be considered. And on the basis of that, I think it is prudent for us to share the officers' expertise and the submission that we have already endorsed with our federal colleagues.
Councillor Tawney, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thanks, Chair.
Do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sinfield?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I'm wondering if the mover might like to also include a fourth clause there that copies in the other elected representatives at state and federal level so that they can assist with the advocacy piece that Councillor Friend Pereira is seeking to achieve here.
Would be happy to do that.
Beyond that, I don't have any further comment.
Councillor Tawney, would you be happy to include something like that as the seconder?
Yes.
We'll just give our governance team some time to make those adjustments. Councillor Sinfield, the amended amendment, is now on the screen. Does that capture your intent?
Not quite. I would take out the word relevant and suggest that the ones that look after the City of Boroondara would be the appropriate ones, and not limit it to state, given the additional clause that Councillor Friend Pereira has inserted there, that it is of federal relevance. So it could say state and federal.
So maybe up the top there, rather than point 4, it could have all federal and state MPs representing Boroondara.
It could.
Governance. Councillor Sinfield, noting that top sentence has now been amended, does that capture your intent?
It does.
Governance, have we removed line 4? Councillor Friend Pereira, are you happy with that amendment?
I am, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tawney as the seconder, are you happy with that?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Would any other councillor wish to speak on this amendment? I will now return to Councillor Friend Pereira. You have a right of reply.
Look, it's very straightforward. We do live in a Commonwealth. We don't want 7 different definitions, confusing things. We need some Commonwealth leadership. Importation of these devices is probably the first port of call. So if we could get those controls back in place, that would help stem the flow of compromised bikes, e-bikes and their batteries into our market. And then by putting it into the Commonwealth Road Vehicle Standards Act, all states and territories would be operating off the same definition, which would help give certainty, not just to the people of Boroondara, but to the people of Australia when they go to purchase or use an e-bike.
Okay, I will now return to Councillor Tawney. Did you have any final? No. I'll now put the motion to a vote. The amendment to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the amendment carried. The amendment has now become the motion. Councillor Sinfield, did you wish to move the motion as written? Or speak to the motion as it now appears?
I'm happy to speak to the motion. Thank you, Chair. And I'll just add that the Community Safety Advisory Committee was briefed by Fire Rescue Victoria on the matters that unfolded at Union Station, and I thank them and the other services that responded to that in the interests of community safety. And I think the committee appreciates the risk of the lithium-ion batteries and the e-bikes and e-scooters, how they have changed the market and changed community safety, not just as far as fire risk is concerned, but also as far as user and pedestrian safety is concerned. I'd like to thank Ms Davey, Mr Hondrakis and the team for their due diligence and how quickly they've managed to digest and turn around this report for our consideration, and commend it to my colleagues. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? There are none. I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We will now move to item 4.3, the temporary closure of Reserve Road. And the officer presenting is Jim Hondrakis, our Manager of Traffic and Transport.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform councillors of the impact of the adjusted temporary road closure of Reserve Road, submissions received by council in relation to the adjusted temporary closure, and to recommend an option for a permanent solution. At the public meeting on the 2nd of December 2024, council passed a resolution to temporarily close a section of Reserve Road before the commencement of the 2025 school year. Reserve Road was temporarily closed on the 25th of January 2025. Of the 79 parking bays, 13 were retained at the Camberwell Road end. Following a council resolution of 17th February 2025, modifications to the temporary road closure of Reserve Road were implemented on the 4th of April 2025. Barriers were relocated further east into Reserve Road, allowing widening of Reserve Road at Burke Road to provide access in and out at the Burke Road end. With the modified temporary road closure, 36 parking spaces have been retained, consisting of the 13 bays at the Camberwell Road end, plus an additional 23 at the Burke Road end. At the Services Delegated Committee meeting of the 17th February, Council also resolved to receive a further report at a future Council meeting no later than 1st of November 2025, which reviews the impact of the adjusted temporary road closure with a view to a permanent solution. Officers subsequently met with key stakeholders, including Camberwell Primary School, the Camberwell Uniting Church and Community Groups, the Camberwell Junction Tennis Club, the Basilica of Our Ladies of Victories. Information was also placed on Council's website and Council's e-newsletter. Responses were also sent to correspondence received. The impact on parking was the key common issue raised by the churches, the tennis club and the community groups. This included both the week and weekends. To investigate the parking concerns, independent detailed parking surveys were undertaken during the week and weekend to better understand parking levels in the immediate and also the wider area. The parking surveys show that parking opportunities are available in both the immediate and wider area at all times of the day and night. However, given varying parking restrictions provided within these areas, the available parking may not suit all stakeholders, and the parking in the wider area, will not be as convenient as the parking that previously existed in Reserve Road. To assist stakeholders with their parking concerns, officers propose further possible parking changes involving changing the existing 5-minute pick-up drop-off parking in Camberwell Road and Inglesby Road to 10-minute parking, changing the existing 2-hour parking within the Inglesby Road car park to 3-hour parking, and changing the existing 2-hour parking spaces within the Butler Street car park to 3-hour parking. For Reserve Road, 4 options were considered, ranging from the current temporary closure, opening Reserve Road with traffic management, time-based boom barriers, and relocating the barriers closer to the school crossing, and these are detailed in the report. Officers consider option 1, the current temporary road closure that has been implemented, with further parking restriction changes, would respond well to many of the issues raised by stakeholders. The possible parking changes can be implemented in the short term. The remaining 3 options would not be as effective in improving safety, with concerns ranging from safety, motorists inadvertently hitting school fences, buildings at the 90-degree spaces, U-turns, parking loss, confusion with opening and closing the road, converting Reserve Road to 2-way, increased traffic in Reserve Road, congestion and the ability to safely turn around. On this basis, officers are seeking approval for option 1 as the treatment for Reserve Road. Officers are also recommended that item 3 in the resolution be more specific to incorporate the parking changes recommended in the council report. This would involve changing item 3 in the resolution to implement, monitor and adjust parking restrictions in the vicinity of Reserve Road, including Inglesby Road, Camberwell Road, the Butler Street car park and the Inglesby Road car park as required. We're happy to answer any questions. With respect to item 4 in the resolution, we are looking at a slight amendment which would effectively read, refer consideration of the ongoing status of Reserve Road, Camberwell, to the development of the Camberwell Civic Precinct Master Plan. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jim. We will now move to public submissions. 16 people have indicated they wish to make a submission on this matter. 6 are against the recommendation in the report and 10 support the recommendation. In addition, I will read out one statement from the Camberwell Business Association. Once I have announced your name, please sit at the top of the horseshoe table. If a submitter is not present when their name is called, we will move on to the next speaker. I remind submitters there is a strict time limit of 3 minutes, and please commence the submission with your name and the suburb in which you reside. Our first submitter tonight will be Mary Buckingham. Mary will be followed by Elizabeth Commodore and then Stephanie Sowerby. Would Mary like to come up to the horseshoe table? Mary, could you please start with your name and suburb?
My name's Mary Buckingham. I'm from Ashburton, and I think I will resign from speaking because I think it's a fait accompli and you're not going to listen to anything anybody has said anyway. So I withdraw. Thank you.
We'll now move to our next speaker, Elizabeth Commodore, and I apologise if I haven't got your name right there, Elizabeth.
My name is Elizabeth Comedo. I reside in Glen Iris. I'm a member of the Camberwell Music Society Committee for over 35 years. A number of years ago, I had been involved in working at Camberwell Primary School, also in an educational capacity. The organisation of Camberwell Music Society has received in the past a number of community grants from the City of Boroondara to assist us financially with running our programs and catering for the special needs of elderly, disabled and younger primary school aged members of the community at Camberwell Primary School, and also tertiary music students. We've organised aged care facilities to bring visitors and residents to our concerts, held programs and training for very successful music production performances involving students from Camberwell Primary School. Boroondara Council has in fact in the past provided us with additional disabled parking spaces, both in Reserve and Camberwell Roads, to cater for our frail elderly resident attendees. Providing fewer parking spaces near the Uniting Church has caused both our frailer, more elderly or disabled attendees to experience apprehension and stress about finding a suitable parking location nearby. Some attendees have difficulty walking, breathing difficulties, or issues with night vision in a more darkened area. It seems a great pity that an issue that could be resolved has not been. Some schools, both primary and secondary, have playing grounds or even classrooms situated across a road adjoining two sites. With staff support and training, vigilance, student training, adequate clear signage and road markings, the situation has been resolved in these cases with goodwill. I'm rather at a loss to comprehend the current status quo, where councils seem unable to budge. The influence of the school community and the most unfortunate accident involving a parent driving at Auburn South Primary School seem to perhaps dominate the decision. We live in a multi-generational society where the needs under Equal Discrimination and Disability Acts are enforceable. Our organisation provides a very high standard of esteemed musicians. Such performers, with their music playing, can provide elevated feelings of happiness and positivity to our attendees, enhancing their mental health. Added to this, our friendly atmosphere and social engagement with each other and the artists over refreshments after the concerts adds to a sense of social connectedness for all age groups attending, from young children, families, and the more isolated elderly members of our community. In our environment, where mental health issues are rampant, a lack of community belonging and community involvement is considered a contributing factor to poor mental health. We provided positive celebration of music making at Camberwell for all to enjoy, to have appropriate stress-free parking nearby for the specific needs of some of our audience. Hence, I strongly request a more rational review of the current situation and a proper consultative approach. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Elizabeth? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Comito. I just wanted to ask, have you actually observed the diagram of the officer recommendation on the report?
Yes, I have.
Right, so you are aware of which option the officers are recommending. Yes. Thank you for the presentation.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Elizabeth? There are none. Thank you, Elizabeth. Our next speaker is Stephanie Sowerby. Stephanie will be followed by Peter Gray and then Jane Pennington.
Good evening, everyone. Elizabeth has said everything that I'm going to say. There's no need for me to repeat it. Absolutely everything applies to also U3A Hawthorn that I'm representing, as well as the Music Society, so I have quite an involvement in it. We use the Parkview room on Tuesday afternoons and all day Thursday, and in terms of everything she said, I really can't say any more. But the parking restriction times don't suit our requirements. That's also another issue. Thank you. I won't hold you up any further.
Councillors, are there any questions for Stephanie? Councillor Tawney has a question for you, Stephanie. I apologise.
Stephanie, sorry. Just a quick question. So the parking restriction times don't work, but is that the current 2-hour times and they're being recommended to change to 3 hours? Would that work better?
Yes, occasionally, but not always. That's the problem. Yes, they sometimes need longer than that.
Even longer than 3 hours?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Yes, I'm just curious, of the 4 options presented in the officer's report, is there one that would be acceptable to you? And if so, why would that one be acceptable?
I'm sorry?
Which option in the officer's report would be acceptable to you and why?
I think we would like to just have more parking places available, and I think it boils down to that. For all the reasons that Elizabeth mentioned, for our people who have all sorts of issues. I can't elaborate more than she did, I don't think.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Stephanie, for your presentation. Just so I understand the path of travel, should users of the church be able to park on Reserve Road, have I got it right that you would walk along Reserve Road and then down that concrete footpath between the church and the old chapel, is that right? Towards Campbell Road where you'd enter the building. That's what right. There's no sort of rear entrance or anything like that users would work. And is that path, it's not lit, I don't believe, is that correct? I'm just trying to remember whether that path that's between the church, whether it's...
They park in Reserve Road.
No, the little concrete footpath between the chapel. I'm just trying to remember whether it's got lights or not. No, that's okay. That's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Stephanie? There are none. Thank you, Stephanie. Our next speaker is Peter Gray.
Chair, councillors, good evening. I ask that this meeting not make a decision on this officer's report tonight. The reason I ask that is that on the 17th of February, this committee set a period for a review to take place. it appears that for the first few months of that period, nothing happened. Then I submitted a document raising the issue of unlawful discrimination on the ground of age and or disability, which I sent to all councillors. In that document, I made the point that council had not initiated any consultation as part of the review. So suddenly there was consultation. There was consultation with 5 groups specified in the report. There was no consultation with the Camberwell Music Society. There was no consultation with Sing Australia. There was no consultation with the Scottish Dancing Group. 3 groups, heavily elderly people, using the parking in Reserve Road to access the church premises, all represented at the meeting on the 17th of February by speakers, all saying that they wanted that parking back one way or the other, and the officers chose not to consult. Now, there's been reference made, Mr Hondrakis made reference to parking surveys. Those parking surveys were conducted at times that are totally irrelevant to the needs of the Camberwell Music Society. Totally irrelevant. Come and have a look at how the parking is when we have a concert on, please, Mr Hondrakis. So I say that council officers should not be permitted to shut down this review 2 months early when they haven't conducted a proper review. My understanding was that part of the review was to see how the arrangements for school drop-offs went during the winter, when it was less attractive to walk from further away and so forth. The report doesn't show that any effort has been made by council officers to monitor those arrangements. So my first point is please adjourn this and make sure council officers do a proper review. My second point, which I'll have to make quickly, is there is a live issue about discrimination. Mr Hondrakis is wrong when he says there are no human rights issues. Unlawful discrimination on the ground of age and or disability is a human rights issue. It is alive. Even if it were eventually to be resolved in favour of council, which I believe it would not, but even if it were, it is now an issue. And everybody in this room, council officers, councillors and council itself have obligations under the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities to act properly in relation to that. Now that has to be
Peter,
resolved.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, sorry.
Sorry, that has to be resolved somehow. I was going to refer it to the Boroondara Community Disability Advisory Council, but Mr Wee tells me that's heavily dominated by councillors, so maybe it's not the right place, but it does have to be resolved. It won't go away with a wave of the hand or a wishing it away.
Thank you, Peter. We'll have to call it there. Councillors, do you have any questions for Peter? There are none.
Can I make one? A question was asked of Stephanie. It's not the parking restrictions that are the problem, it's the parking surveys that don't show the needs that we have.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jane Pennington. Jane will be followed by Ruth Crawley.
Good evening. I'm Jane Pennington from Sing Australia and I reside in Kew. I think our previous speaker has actually covered all the points that I was going to make. I would just make one or two brief ones. Sing Australia sings every week in the Uniting Church. We are aged between 60 and 90 and many have mobility issues. I don't believe we were consulted adequately or even at all as regular users of the Uniting Church. It was my understanding from the February meeting that all user groups would be consulted prior to the report being finalised. It would not appear to have happened in the case of Sing Australia. Our members are feeling discriminated against as they are of an older demographic and their views would appear to be being not taken into consideration. Hence, it is not possible to support the report at the moment until consultation with all of the user groups takes place. So I would support Peter's option of delaying the report until full consultation has occurred. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Jane? Councillor Pattis. Sorry, Jane.
Sorry, I can't see.
Through you, Chair. I think, was it Ms. Pemberton, was it?
Pennington.
Pennington. Which of the, if you were to make a choice of the options, which of the options that are presented in the report would you have a preference for?
We'd go for option 1. We would support the status quo, but we would prefer that consultation had taken place. But if we are going to support one, it would be option 1, yes.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Jane? There are none. Thank you, Jane. Our final speaker in opposition tonight is Ruth Crawley.
Good evening, I'm Ruth Crawley and I live in Deep Dean and am the chairperson of the Camberwell Uniting Church congregation. We as a congregation appreciate the interaction we have had with the councillors and council officers following the February decision to temporarily close Reserve Road. However, we are disappointed that the continuing closure of Reserve Road is being recommended to the meeting this evening, although the extension of parking times in Inglesby Road and Butler Street car parks would be a welcome change. It has been helpful to have the additional car parks added to Reserve Road following the February meeting. Our disappointment stems from 2 angles. Camberwell Primary School is not the only school which has campuses on 2 sides of a road, but seems to be the one to have the road closed at its entrances. Having watched children being dropped off in Camberwell Road, I find it alarming that quite a number of the children exit the cars on the driver's side, and then a surprising number of vehicles attempting U-turns in heavy traffic, obviously to avoid Camberwell Junction. The other is that access to our buildings has been compromised for people with mobility issues, as we previously stated at the February meeting and as previous speakers this evening have noted. And that is disappointing and is of concern. Our car parks, which are private property, are often used by people going to activities at the school or here in the council buildings on Sundays and during the week, which causes some inconvenience to our building users. And it seems that the needs of those living in and using facilities in Camberwell now are less important to those preparing the report for tonight's meeting of the council, that the projected needs of those who may come to live in Camberwell in the future following further building developments are more important. We cannot support the permanent closure of Reserve Road. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Ruth? Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. Through you for Ruth. So, Ruth, I'm just trying to interpret what you're saying. Number one, if you had to choose between the options, which one would you choose? And number 2, are you effectively saying you'd like to see more disabled parking spots if the road couldn't be closed? Is that what you're saying?
No. I would say we would prefer option 1. And no, it is the number of car parks for people who come to events, who have, it is easier to access our building from Reserve Road than it is from Camberwell Road. It's flatter, and that's where people have been feeling, I think, the most inconvenience and change.
Councillor Tawney.
I just want to clarify something. Thank you, Ruth. So you said this is the permanent closure of the road, but I thought this is still the temporary closure of the road. Could I just have clarification on that?
Through you, Chair. we are seeking approval to make this temporary closure permanent, subject to whatever happens in the master plan down the track.
So my question to you is, were you aware that it's not the permanent closure tonight, subject to approval of the Camberwell Civic Master Plan, which is later down the track?
Right, okay. We still would prefer that the road was open at all. And yeah, we're saying for the future that we would oppose a permanent closure.
Thank you, Ruth.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Clory, for your presentation. You spoke about on Sundays and the difficulty to actually obtain parking on a Sunday. Could you explain that in a little bit more detail? Are you talking about parking that would be typically delegated for the Uniting Church or used by the Uniting Church, or are you talking about parking in general?
Both. There are people who just come into our car parks, there's nobody parking there when they come at 9 o'clock when we need it at 10. And also in the street, often the parking in Camberwell Road is all taken before people come, particularly at the weekends, but also during the week.
Thank you for that. I'll put a question to the officers later. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Ruth? There are none. Thank you, Ruth. We will now move to our next grouping of speakers. Our first speaker will be Gillian Kyriacou. Gillian will be followed by Alexandra Duncan and Henry Duncan.
Hi everyone, I am Jill Kyriacou and I live about 500 metres from this location on the other side of Burke Road in Hawthorn East. So not very far. I've been a resident of the community since 2010 and I am a parent to 4 children who have attended Campbell Primary School and I have 2 kids that are still attending Campbell Primary School. So first I'll just say good evening councillors and thank you for allowing space to speak. I'm here tonight to support the permanent closure of Reserve Road outside Campbell Primary School and the campus across the road. This stretch of Reserve Road poses a daily and unnecessary danger to young students, staff and families. Hundreds of children cross between the 2 campuses multiple times each day for classes, activities and shared facilities. The constant flow of vehicles creates a hazardous environment, increasing the risk of accidents, injuries or worse. No parent, teacher or community member should have to worry about children being placed in harm's way simply to attend school. Campbell Primary School is at the heart of our community and the safety of its students must take priority over through traffic convenience. Closing Reserve Road would create a safe and unified school precinct by removing the barrier of a busy road between the 2 campuses. It would eliminate unnecessary traffic risks for children as young as 5 who cannot reliably judge vehicle speed or distance. Closing the road would support active transport by encouraging families to walk or cycle without fear of cars cutting through. And it would promote a child-focused community space that reflects our shared value of protecting the most vulnerable. As adults, as parents, and as a community, we have a responsibility to protect children. They cannot change the traffic conditions, but we can. We must act with foresight and not wait for a tragedy before taking action. Traffic can and will be redirected to safer, more suitable roads. But children only get one childhood. If something happens, the loss is permanent for that child, their family, and for our community. This is not just about roads or parking. It's about compassion, responsibility, and legacy. By closing Reserve Road, you can show that our community values children over convenience. and you will leave a lasting impact that future generations will thank you for. I urge you to act with courage and compassion and vote to close Reserve Road permanently. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Councillors, are there any questions for Gillian? Councillor Buki.
Thank you for the presentation. But are you aware that we are talking about the temporary closure and we've got a number of options that we're working through today? So that's what this meeting is about. It's not about the permanent closure.
I understand that.
Yep. So out of all the options, which one do you support?
So what am I looking at up there on the screen? So what's the option one that says on there?
Mr. Hondrakis, do you mind just reminding?
It's not up
Through
there.
you, Chair. Option 1 is what we actually have at the moment
Yep.
with the closure and the barriers where they're located, with 13 parking spaces at the Camberwell Road end and 23 spaces at the
Yep.
Burke
So
Road
to
end.
make the temporary closure permanent. Is that correct? Yes. Sorry, I didn't make that clear in my speech. So I vote to encourage number 1, to be clear, to make the temporary closure of the road permanent, not confusing for anyone. And change is difficult, I understand, and I have compassion for people of the older generations who've been part of this community way longer than me, but I think that we need to recognise that children and young people need to be heard and have a voice, and we're responsible ensure that they're safe. There are other ways that we can address concerns of parking and mobility for, the older generation, which I have compassion for, but my position here is to support the younger generation who don't have a voice here tonight.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. My question was actually going to be very similar to Councillor Buki's, and with your indulgence, I do ask the officers if we could actually put up option 1 to avoid any confusion, so the diagram's on the screen, because I sense some of our prior presenters may not have fully understood what's proposed tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Gillian? Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Gillian.
So I wanted to sit down.
I'm just...
Oh, no.
I was going to ask you a question, but Chair, it sounds like maybe this speaker, but also anyone following, may not be aware that there are 4 options, and option 3 is to close Reserve Road with time-based boom barriers, and option 4 is to close it with barriers relocated closer crossing. So there are 2 other options to close Reserve Road. Option 1 is to leave it as is, and option 2 is to actually open it up. So I'm just trying to make sure that anyone who speaks from here on, if they haven't read the report, at least they're aware that there are 4 options that we're considering. So maybe through you, I'll ask the speaker again. Of those 4 options, option 1 being the status quo, option 2 being to open it up with traffic management, and option 3 and 4 being to close it, but with boom barriers, which one you would prefer?
So maybe it'll be clearer for everyone in the room if I could talk to each option very quickly.
I think I just prefer an indication.
Okay, sorry, I thought I did that earlier, but I'm happy to do that again. Option 1, to permanently close the temporary closure that we have in place at the moment.
Okay.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Gillian? There are none. Thank you, Gillian. Our next speaker is Alexandra Duncan.
Hello, my name is Alex and I am in grade 2 at Campbell Primary School and I live in Canterbury. Since Reserve Road has been closed, school feels different in a good way. School feels safe and calm when I come into school in the morning and when I go home in the afternoon. I don't have to worry about cars rushing past the school gates anymore. This year we have also started walking from school more often. I feel calmer and I listen better in class after I have walked to school. It's much fun walking home because we often stop to get a snack like fruit buns, sushi or mini pizzas from the bakery. Even the days we drive, my mum is a lot calmer in the car. We haven't seen any more accidents around the school and trips feel much safer. At playtime, it's better too. Reserve Road doesn't feel scary anymore. We can talk and walk without worrying about traffic. I think closing Reserve Road has made our school calmer and happier place. Thank you for listening to us, and I hope you keep it this way so everyone can feel safe at school every day. Thank you.
You spoke very well, Alexandra. Some of the councillors might have questions for you. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alexandra, for your presentation. Can you see on the screen, there's a diagram there that shows the temporary closure?
Yes.
And what could potentially be a permanent closure?
Mm.
Is that what you are supporting this evening?
Yeah, I want option 1, what we have now, and make it permanent.
Thank you very much. Well said.
And Councillor Abuki?
Hello, Alexandra. How are you?
Good.
Very well done. How many times do you cross the road during school?
1 to 2 times.
For different classes? Is that what happens?
No, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
I think that concludes our questions. Thank you, Alexandra. You were very brave. Our next speaker is Henry Duncan.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Henry Duncan and I am in Year 6 at Campbell Primary School. I live in Canterbury and yeah. Over the past 7 years, I've seen so many changes to our school. What used to be a horrible car park is now a playground with an amazing giant play dome where children play all the time. Our old, leaky, mouldy classrooms are finally being fixed. And thanks to this new council, you listen to the safety concerns and close Reserve Road, taking away what used to be a daily danger and a big stress for students and families at our school. These actions didn't just happen by themselves. They happened because people in our community have spoken up for us year after year. Tonight, I want to do the same, not just for me, but for the future children of Camberwell. The Reserve Road closure has made a huge difference, but as more apartments are built, children won't have a big backyards that some of you had growing up. Our school and local parks will be the places where we play and spend time. So I ask you, please don't bring the cars and traffic back into what's already been a successful trial. Instead, use this chance to make Camberwell an even safer, greener and more livable place for our community in the years to come. Because I have the power to help make decisions, because until I have the power to help make decisions for our community, I'm counting on you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. You spoke very well. Do any of our councillors have any questions for Henry? There are none. Well done, Henry. Our next speaker is Nick Quince. Nick will be followed by Elaine Coe and Nicole Lindenman.
Good evening, my name's Nick Quince, I live in Camberwell. I have a son in grade 2 and I drop my son off and pick up daily. We walk from our home in Camberwell to the school. First thing I'd like to do is thank you for the decision you made back in December of last year. That decision has made that space outside the school inherently more safe for our youngest community members. And as we've already heard, the safety of our youngest community members is one of the most important things that we can do as adults to look after and prioritise the safety for those children. I'd like to make some observations. As I mentioned, I regularly walk to and from the school, and I did that both prior to the closure happening and of course since then. What I've observed is an environment that is significantly more safe than it was previously. Removing the cars, of course, removes the risk of children being hit by cars. And at the last meeting, we spoke about the distractions of phones and those types of things, which can cause accidents to happen. I've also noticed that the arrangements for parking elsewhere in the immediate vicinity seem to be working very well. I was pretty conscientious of whether the change would create challenges, but I certainly haven't observed any, and I think the arrangements work particularly well with drop-off and pick-up in the immediate area. In addition to that, I've observed families going and stopping at a cafe and parking their car at the cafe and then walking to the school. So not only has it made a safer environment for the kids, but it's also created a healthier one as well. So I'm strongly in support of option 1, and I would also support the permanent closure of Reserve Road in its current form. I think the focus should be on greening that area in the future, and I'm sure that will be addressed as part of the redevelopment plans for the general area. But again, I'd like to thank you for your decision that you made in December. It has made the safety of all of our kids the priority, and from a parent, you know, I feel much more relaxed when I drop my child off each day at school, so thank you for that.
Councillors, are there any questions for Nick? Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you for talking to us, Mr. Quince. There was a comment from one of the previous speakers around her observations on Camberwell Road. Have you observed anything on Camberwell Road, any different drop-off patterns since Reserve Road was temporarily closed?
So I've noticed the short-term parking on Camberwell Road being used. I've been surprised that it hasn't been as busy as I was expecting. You know, I think people have looked at different options for dropping their kids off, and Camberwell Road may not be as in demand as I thought it would be. So I think the current arrangements, certainly for drop-off and pick-up, work very well, and people have, you know, a range of parking options, whether it's, I think it's the Butler Street car park and then crossing at the lights, whether it's parking on Camberwell Road. I think it works very well.
Right, thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Nick? There are none. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elaine Coe.
Good evening, I'm Elaine Coe and I reside in Canterbury. I have got a little bit of show and tell to do tonight, so just want to make sure that you're ready before my time starts. Wonderful, thank you, and I'll let you know when we have to flick the slides. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening rather, chairs, councillors. I'm the president of the Camberwell Primary School Council. I represent here tonight more than 1,000 of the heaviest daily users of the Camberwell Civic Precinct, made up of over 620 students, 350 families, and 70 staff. Let me begin by reminding us why we're here this evening. Let's go to slide 1. 29th of October 2024, a car crashed into Auburn South Primary at pickup time. An 11-year-old boy was killed, 4 other injured. Slide number 2. Less than 3 weeks later, on the 5th of November 2024, the exact same thing happened on Reserve Road, right at our own school gate during school drop-off, where kids were actually playing on the other side of this fence. And you can see that car right there and that big hole in our fence. I'm sad to report, on the other hand, this is not the only event. Slide number 3, March 2020, the same accident, but now on the other side of Reserve Road, forcing an evacuation of 13 classrooms, our library, and the school hall. Meanwhile, June 2023, a P-plater in her mummy's 2-rack tractor, driving down the wrong way on Reserve Road at pickup time, refusing to turn back until police was called. This is just a small sample of many more accidents and near misses I have time to share with you tonight. And these are the reasons why you have trialled the closure of Reserve Road. And that trial, as option 1 before you tonight, has been an outstanding success. In a recent survey of more than 200 participants, representing 2/3 of the CPS family and staff, 93% agreed the Reserve Road closure strikes the right balance between children's safety and parking needs in the precinct. By contrast, all the other alternatives under consideration will come at a cost circa $750,000 to create car parking space, which the council's own data show are not needed. Meanwhile, it reintroduces the very safety risks that you have so successfully eliminated. I therefore echo the recommendation by the Boroondara City Council officer, the representative from Sing Australia, for you to support option 1, to make the trial closure of Reserve Road permanent. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Elaine? There are none. Thank you, Elaine. Our next speaker is Nicole Lindenman. Nicole will be followed by John Clulo, and then de Boile de Rougeau Aldron. I apologise. Nicole.
Good evening, councillors. My name's Nicole Lindemann. I have lived in Hawthorne East since 1995, and I'm the Secretary of Camberwell Junction Tennis Club. Camberwell Junction Tennis Club appreciates the time and effort council officers have invested in engaging with stakeholders, some stakeholders, as I've become aware of this evening, and preparing the report for tonight's meeting. Over the past 9 months, the Civic Precinct has experienced significant disruption. As the current traffic measures are still considered temporary, and I would like to understand our transition from temporary to permanent a little better, because I thought we were still talking about a temporary arrangement this evening. Introducing further changes now would likely create additional confusion and lead to unnecessary costs for Boroondara ratepayers. For these reasons, the club supports the officer's recommendation to proceed with option 1, maintaining the status quo. Much of our club's stakeholder meeting with council officers, and hence the report, was focused on parking in the precinct since the temporary road closure was implemented. We acknowledge that parking options for tennis club users has certainly improved since the road closure was modified in April. However, we also believe there has been a significant impact to traffic flow throughout the precinct. The full effect of this on local residents and businesses is difficult to measure, but should not be overlooked. Looking ahead to a long-term solution, a permanent solution, we believe that traffic safety improvements should be implemented and that Reserve Road should be reopened. It is important to remember, as outlined in the report, that Reserve Road is a government-owned road on Crown land designated for public road purposes. Furthermore, the current layout at Camberwell Primary School, where the school operates across 2 campuses divided by Reserve Road, is the result of decisions made by the Victorian Department of Education. Therefore, any permanent traffic or infrastructure changes should involve state government consultation and funding. rather than being solely the responsibility of Boroondara ratepayers. I've also would like to just have it noted that I have observed some very concerning pedestrian behaviour in Reserve Road as it is currently, and I have raised these concerns with Mr Jim Hondrakis, and as a result of that, some modifications were made to how students from Camberwell Primary School were released from school and perhaps where they were entering school because of gathering of parents in a certain location where there were cars turning around at the 3-point turnaround zone. So I would like to say that I support option 1, but I think option 1 as it is, and I've raised these concerns also with Mr Hondrakis, is that I don't think people understand that the section where at the Burke Road End Reserve Road was opened, it's supposed to be a turning circle, and I don't think that the signage in that location is good enough to direct traffic to what they're supposed to be doing. And as a result, people are parking in no parking zones every single day. I know that officers are there and often, ticketing these people, but I think, the school needs to take a bit of a proactive approach in that situation as well, and in that area, and encouraging their students, their parents, their guardians.
Cole, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Doing the right thing. So last thing, we strongly urge those leading the development of the Civic Precinct Master Plan to carefully consider these factors when shaping the future of the precinct. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Nicole? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, because your feedback is beneficial, constructive criticism, very helpful. And were you leading to a suggestion that perhaps more of a cul-de-sac turning circle would be better than the current arrangement?
That is what it's intended to be. It was located at that point because it's the point where vehicles can drive into the Basilica.
Yes.
So where the bollards currently are, or the barriers currently are. But my understanding is that the space that has been allocated is enough for a car to turn around. Yes. But I don't think it's obvious enough to people, to drivers, that is actually what they're meant to do in that space. And not be parking there, yeah. Well, certainly not. There's no parking signs everywhere, but every single day I am there in the morning and the afternoon at school drop-off and school pick-up times, and every single day there are people parking there to either go into the school to collect their children or to pick up children, drop them off, park, wait. Yeah. So I think, I mean, hopefully all of these things with changes, there needs to be a time for people to understand the situation. We've had so many changes in a short period that I do understand that it takes time for these things, for people to understand, but I think I see the same people there every afternoon. And
thank you very much for your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillors, are there any other questions for Nicole? There are none. Thank you, Nicole. Our next speaker is John Cluleau.
Hello everybody, my name is John Cluleau. I reside in Blackburn South. Thank you for this time to speak. Now, I'm new to the area. I have a son who started prep this year. I don't know the history. I've only started developing contacts in the community. And I didn't know the school before we started. I don't actually even live in the area. I just come every day on my bike, drop off my son. And I discovered that we have these 2 campuses, and there was this road blocked off and kids running across back and forth. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, think about it. We've got 2 campuses, brothers and sisters and friends, running across after school or between schools when they have to change campuses. And there's security, it's safer, the parents aren't as stressed. I can just leave my bike there in the street. I drop my kid off and then I just quickly go away. That's fantastic. And we heard lots of about the challenges, and it is challenging for some people. It has impact on certain members of the community, especially the older generation. It is a challenge, but that's what it is. It's a challenge. And that's what life is. It's a challenge. We have to protect our kids. That's the first and foremost thing. It's all about the kids. So thank you very much.
Councillors, are there any questions for John?
No, I support option 1.
Councillors, any questions? There are none. Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot.
This is a beautiful name, but I simply can't pronounce it. De Boldero. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Audouin de Buxeuil-d'Orjou.
Marvellous.
And I live in Camberwell. We've actually moved a year ago from Singapore. And obviously we chose Camberwell because of the bilingual aspect of the school. It's true that when we arrived in the school, the first thing we saw was the danger for our kids. I have kids in the senior campus, which is on the side of Camberwell Road, and I have kids on the other campus, which is on the other side of Reserve Road, and it's true that there is a lot of traffic the whole day long. So well done for making this decision of closing the road temporarily. I've also was shocked by what happened in Open House and every event that Hélène mentioned, and I would not like to be in your seat today if you choose to reopen because of the kind of responsibility it implies towards the kids. So I would strongly suggest, and I support the option 1, because that's the safety option, and that should be our priority. I really feel for the member of the older community, and I think there are many other options that we could consider to make their life easier, going to their different church. And I think the people that come for a tennis class can probably park a bit further and run to the court, because that, at the end of the day, it's the intention. That's about it. Thank you for listening to me.
Councillors, are there any questions for our speaker? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Bonjour. I trust that I didn't hear what I thought you maybe just said, that you're suggesting that the members of the community choose a different church. Was that your suggestion?
No, not at all. I say that I feel for them. The fact that the road closure makes their life difficult. Of course, I'm not suggesting what you just said. I said that there is a lot of options that we can make our life easier with, and like buses, we can think of maybe orientated the parkings for their community only, because to be honest, as a parent, I don't need a parking. We started walking to school every day now. So I think that's more the direction that we should take, like prioritize those people.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any final questions, councillors? There are none. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Alicia C. Alicia will be followed by Thomas Bennett, and then I'll read out a short statement.
Hello. Alicia. I'm Alicia. I am a lifetime member of Camberwell community. I live in Canterbury. I have attended primary school and high school in this area, and now I am a teacher in this area. So I know this area so well. As I am a teacher, I'm a teacher in the junior campus of Camberwell Primary School, the music teacher, and every single lesson we have to cross back to senior school for the room and the resources. So I'm crossing that road more than 12 times a day with 5-year-old children, and it's like 18 kids at once, trying to cross the road with kids who love and are excited by the joys of the outdoor world. And then not only am I trying to avoid cars, making sure they cross the road safely, I'm avoiding bikes and e-scooters and other pedestrians which they have a right to use the road, but it's still unknown danger. So with all of that, all that happens at the beginning and the end of my lesson, every single day, 12 times a day roughly, it is a lot more than the teaching is required. And it is just for their learning, and their learning is so important. And I do believe the incident at Auburn South was mentioned. I was also there at that time. And it is something that stays with you for forever. And not only does it stay with you forever, the community of Auburn South is still healing. There are still children who are not okay yet, as well as teachers who've had to take a considerable amount of time off. And as I've already had that experience once in my life, and I'm only 30, I don't really wish to have anything like that happen again, especially to these gorgeous children that I now have started teaching this year. It really is important that this road closure, yes, it is temporary, has maybe a more permanent solution than the water bollards that have been put in place. I'm fine for where they are. I'm fine for, you know, still having the parking for everybody. That's all great. It is just that portion of the road really does need to be shut because it's just incredibly important. Let me just read over my notes here. E-scooter, yeah, parking. I've actually mentioned everything. That is wonderful. But yeah, the safety really is about the children, and the children have to come first. In terms of parking, there is ample parking around, and there are still, of course, disabled spots. I think they should be maybe brought back in, because I think at the moment there's only one. But the temporary closure of the road needs to have maybe a concrete bollard, something that stops bikes, e-scooters and cars from being able to go through, because I have seen some people be a bit cheeky and they have moved those water bollards so that they can bring their car in past them. So they're there, but people still have a way around them, and that does not put the lives of the children first.
Thank you, Alicia. Councillors, are there any questions for Alicia? Councillor Rabuki.
Thank you, Ms Singh. When you talk about crossing more than 12 times a day, is that a whole classroom that you're escorting?
Yes,
and
it is.
When you do that, is it just yourself escorting a classroom of children?
Yes, it is.
Right.
So you can see why I am very much for this, because one person with 18 kids, 18 to 25 kids, we'll be honest, backwards and forwards. And then at recess and lunch, which Les Jardins, the park playground area, that is more, because the senior kids are allowed to come across campus. So during that time, I am like a lollipop person, trying to make sure it's safe for all these kids just to cross the road and then move into Les Jardins where the teacher on duty is. But yeah, it's still, because I'm there, I'm always crossing, they're like, oh, you can let me across, which is like 50 plus children crossing at those points, and that probably happens 4 times a day, on top of my 12 times.
Okay, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. It was very enlightening, I think. Just a question on a side issue about teacher parking. Could you just remind us here at Council where you park, how that works in terms of, you know, a number of teachers that need to...
I have very strong feelings about the parking. As a music teacher, I have a lot of resources to carry to school. I have now adopted a trolley, like basically suitcase size, because I am having to walk from my car park, which is past Trafalgar Road? Yeah, on the other side of that, because all the parks from there to the school in Camberwell are like 2-3 hours. And I'm sure I'm not the only teacher that does this. We work straight through our lunch, because lunch, it happens, but we need that time. And so, yeah, we can't move our car every 2 or 3 hours. The teaching schedule doesn't allow it, let alone our breaks. So yeah, I have to park like 10 minutes walk away, which on its own, not too much, but when you're carrying resources, music teacher, I carry recorder, drumsticks, the assessments, my laptop, my lunch if I have time to eat that, but it's a ridiculous amount. So my car parking feelings are very strong, and I think maybe parking permits should be given to the teachers at the school, but that's another issue. This one is the safety of the children crossing the road.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Alicia? Yes. There are none. Thank you, Alicia.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Our final speaker for tonight is Thomas Bennett.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Thomas Bennett from Hawthorne East, and I'm also the Camberwell Primary School Council. Thanks, Alicia. That was fantastic and good to hear from a teacher on the different aspects. Before the Reserve Road trial closure, many feared traffic chaos during the drop-off and pick-up. That did not occur. Instead, traffic improved. The daily bottleneck was dispersed, stress reduced, and more families are now walking or parking nearby, making the school approach calmer and safer. When weighing priorities, child safety must come first. Road closure for safety are not discrimination. They are legitimate measures that protect the most vulnerable. Reduced traffic also makes the area safe for the elderly, residents and pedestrians. On behalf of the School Council, I urge you to make the closure permanent and adopt option 1. The trial has eliminated safety risks, improved traffic flow and strengthened community wellbeing. Concerns about chaos and parking shortages never materialised. Instead, the closure has delivered a calmer, safer and more livable precinct for everyone. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for our speaker? There are none. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
I will now read out a short statement from the Camberwell Business Association. Submission to the Service Delegated Committee, Agenda Item 4.3, Temporary Closure Reserve Road. The Camberwell Traders Association supports the officer's recommendation in option 1 to maintain status quo at this time. Some of the biggest challenges for strip shopping precincts like Camberwell are traffic flow and parking. The provision of such have a direct impact on customers, employees and employers and provide a clear advantage to shopping malls like Chadstone and Westfield. We acknowledge and thank officers for the amendments to parking that were made following the initial closure of Reserve Road. These have reinstated some valuable parking for a wide range of users. In the report of tonight's meeting, we also support the proposal to increase the number of 2-hour parking places to 3 hours in Inglesby Road and Butler Street. However, any closure of Reserve Road, in our view, has a long-term detrimental effect by forcing more movement to and through the junction intersection, together with the chaos of 2 dead-end cul-de-sacs and Reserve Road. Our view is that traffic safety measures would and should be the solution to the school concerns as a result of the Department of Education creating a 2-site campus. Therefore, we maintain our previously stated view that we do not support permanent closure of Reserve Road and do not support more changes to this road at this time, as they are likely to generate even more confusion, which becomes a deterrent to users of the shopping precinct. We will now return to officers for matters arising.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to the issues that were raised, Elizabeth raised disability parking or accessible parking. We're open to increasing the number of disability parking bays if there is a need for it. And we've expressed that with the community groups, but the advice we actually had at those meetings was that the level of the disability parking seems to be working well. We did increase it by 1 at the Burke Road end and also by 1 at the Camberwell Road end, so there are now 2 spaces at each end. I want to talk about safety. That's also come up, and Elizabeth also raised that. There are some issues with the 90-degree parking spaces. Firstly, the footpath is incredibly narrow. It's 1.2 metres in width, and that's narrower than what you actually have in a normal residential street at 1.5 metres in width. Those 90-degree parking spaces, there were 4 incidents where effectively a driver inadvertently drove forward rather than reverse. And they were actually on the 22nd of June 2015 the 17th of July 2015, the 13th of February 2020, and there was the recent incident on the 25th of November 2024 last year. We've got photographic evidence of those. Also, the school did alert us earlier in June 2015 of another 2 incidents, but we don't have any photographic evidence of that. There was also a near miss involving a child crossing Reserve Road in November 2024, which we flagged in the council report in December. With respect to parking, Stephanie raised users of the Parkview room, which is located next to the library. The need for longer term parking, that has been raised as an issue, so that's one of the key recommendations where we are recommending that we convert the 2-hour parking spaces in Inglesby Road to 3-hour, and also the Butler Street car park 2-hour spaces to 3-hour. There would be 135 spaces converted to 3P in the Inglesby Road car park, and 115 spaces in the Butler Street car park. So that's all the car park, except for some of the trader permit zones and some of the fleet spaces that are restricted. What I also should say is that we've undertaken a number of parking surveys, and Mr. Gray made reference to undertaking the surveys, I guess after he initially wrote into council. Our intention was always to undertake surveys during winter, when there would be a higher proportion of parents and carers driving to and from school. So we were looking at the worst case scenario. And those surveys were done independently. They were done during the week, and they were done on weekends from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Over those 4 days. In terms of consultation, there were concerns raised that we didn't consult. We reached out to the Basilica, the school, the Uniting Church, the Camberwell Junction Traders Association, and what we've done with the Uniting Church is that was our first point of call, and we actually asked them to convene a meeting with all the community groups. So that's what we did early in the year, and that's what we did again. So that meeting was actually held on the 2nd of July 2025, and at that meeting there was a room full of people, and we had representatives from Sing Australia, the Scottish Country Dancers, Probus, as well as church representative, and there was also some other community group representatives. We also undertook electronic traffic surveys. So again, they were done in June during winter, and we did those for 7 days. The data was collected independently, and that gave us a good basis to provide an assessment and the recommendation before council today. Mr. Gray sort of raised some concerns regarding discrimination. We have responded to Mr. Gray. We sought legal advice, and our advice is that council has not discriminated with respect to the Equal Opportunity Act, the Disability Discrimination Act, and the Age Discrimination Act, and that advice has been provided. With respect to Ruth Crawley, regarding the changes on Camberwell Road, we have spent a lot of time out there as officers. Personally, I've gone down there over 100 times, and I have not seen children being let out on the wrong side of the road. I think parents tend to be responsible, and they are aware that they are on a main road. It is 40 k's at all times. We have traffic signals, we have congestion, and they tend to do the right thing, and they allow children to, get in the car and get out of the car on the correct side of the road. As I said earlier, I think Ruth also mentioned accessible parking. We're still open to increasing that if there is a need, and we're willing to actually have that discussion. In terms of the two Uniting Church car parks, the church does have signage on one of the car parks, effectively advising that it is a private car park and it is not to be used by others. There's a total of 16 parking bays through there. Our surveys show that those spaces are being used, but they do vary. At times there is plenty of capacity, at other times there is very, very little capacity. With respect to the other presenters, they seem to be supportive of option one. It certainly addresses the issue of risk and safety, and we think it provides a good solution that best sort of meets the needs of the various sort of stakeholders whilst maintaining a good level of safety. Nicole raised a number of issues, impacted traffic flow. We've undertaken studies, and again, these were electronic traffic surveys that were done in December last year, prior to any closure, and there is very little impact on Inglesby Road with respect to traffic, and we're finding that traffic has redistributed, and there would have been a little bit more traffic in Camberwell Road. But notwithstanding that, the Butler Street car park is heavily used by parents and carers for pick-up drop-off, and we've got surveys which show the numbers, and in the afternoon it's in the order of 147, 150 parents crossing that road with their children. And in the morning it's a little bit less than that, but again equally just as high. The school did make changes. Nicole mentioned the issue of turnaround. As officers, we've tried very hard to make Reserve Road unattractive for pick-up drop-off. There are no pick-up drop-off bays in Reserve Road. So we don't have 5-minute parking nor 10-minute parking. It's all 3-hour parking. What we're finding is initially there was a level of illegal parking that has actually subsided. The surveys show that we've got in the order of 48 to 50 vehicles in the morning peak between 8 and 9. So that's 25 coming in and 25 coming out at the Burke Road end over an hour period. In the afternoon, it's typically averaging 40. So it's 20 people coming in and 20 out over an hour period. So it's not very high at all. The school did respond with respect to closing the gate, and that's addressed a lot of the issues that previously existed. We've also made it clear to the school that we do not want any pick-up drop-off parking in Reserve Road. We've conveyed that message to the school. We've given them material that has been circulated to the school community. And our surveys show that it is working relatively well. It has quietened down, it has settled down. Notwithstanding that, there are some issues with certain people doing the wrong thing, and we work closely with civic services to ensure that we do have a good level of enforcement. In terms of the crossing movements, they are significant. You know, historically, we had over 400 crossing between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m, and that number would have increased. I take the point that Alicia raised, 12 times per day for classes, and also during recess and lunch, where use would be made of the new playground. But we feel on balance that option one delivers the most benefits whilst maintaining a good level of safety and addresses most of the issues. And in response to the parking issues, we think further refinements would go a long way towards meeting the needs of the varied sort of stakeholders. Thank you.
Chair, if I can just add a couple of further remarks to Mr. Hondrakis's response. This report seeks the continuation of the temporary treatment in Reserve Road as is at the moment. This is not a decision that officers are putting forward to have a permanent treatment of Reserve Road. That would be subject to a separate process, a statutory process, which would consider the likes of discontinuing of a road or further. We are not seeking that resolution at this point in time, and part 4 of this resolution does consider the ongoing status of that to be referred to the development of the Camberwell Civic Precinct Master Plan. That would be the appropriate place for the ongoing consideration of that. And if council was of a mind at that time to undertake a treatment of a permanent nature, a statutory consultation process again with the community would commence following that resolution. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for officers? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. The first is following, I'll change the order of my questions. The second follows the comments of the Director in relation to the development of the Camberwell Civic Precinct Master Plan. Are council officers in a position to advise the timing of when that might be able to be presented publicly or to council?
Through you, Chair, officers are working through work associated with that at the moment. We expect that that would be presented to council in the next 2 months, with a view that the council would seek to adopt that for the purposes of community consultation specifically, not a resolution at that time, but for consultation again in a similar format to tonight, to receiving responses from the community about that prior to the consideration of adoption of that, potentially later in this year or early in the new year.
So just on that point, there would be, the officers would be recommending consultation again. That's correct?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. And my second question, if I might, Chair, the Camberwell Primary music teacher, Alicia, raised a concern about the occasional movement of the water-filled barriers and finding a more permanent solution to avoid any tampering and misuse. Is that something officers can comment upon? You know, the opportunities down the track to address such concerns and look at more fixed solutions when that might be able to happen?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, officers regularly, given the proximity of the site as well, regularly monitor and observe what is happening in Reserve Road. We will give consideration to any other treatments or prevention of the moving of the bollard or barriers to prevent that activity.
Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hondrakis, for your very well articulated response to the presenter's questions. Actually, Councillor Franco asked one of my questions, so my second question is with regard to the Uniting Church, and we heard tonight from various community groups that are patrons of the church, and particularly their concern on Sunday when it's a day of worship. Is there anything else Council can do to work with the church to encourage them to have perhaps new sign, more prominent signs, signs that will hopefully encourage, in theory, illegal users of parking in what is a private car park as a deterrent to further support the Uniting Church members?
Through you, Chair, there are 2 car parks there. One is for a total of 16 spaces, 7 spaces and 9. One of the car parks does have fairly clear signage. The other one could do with some signage to reinforce that it is essentially a private car park. Sunday, there is parking available on Sunday. The difference with Sunday is we've got the Rotary Market for the Station Street car park, and the Butler Street car park up until midday tends to be at capacity by virtue of losing all the spaces in the Station Street car park. But the Inglesby Road car park, the spaces in Reserve Road, and also Inglesby Road are readily available at that time. So it may be a little bit of information to churchgoers, and that would also assist the Basilica in that regard, as well as the Uniting Church for a Sunday. But certainly the signage can be improved in one of those car parks.
Thank you. And is that something that you could reach out to the church and assist them with the type of what might be appropriate signage?
Through you, Chair, we can certainly give them advice in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. Officers, I'm seeking a bit of a memory refresher here. How many parking bays are available on Camberwell Road on the west side between Reserve Road and Lower Reserve? That's part one of the question. And then part two, what are the current restrictions on a Tuesday between 10:30 and 1:30 on Camberwell Road, on a Saturday between 7:30 and 10:30 on Camberwell Road? And do we have any occupancy data for those time slots? And those time slots seem to be the ones most used by the Musical Society, which is why I'm asking.
Through you, Chair, we've got a total of, I'm looking at this, Camberwell Road, 31 spaces. There are 29 spaces that are three-hour parking between 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and 10-minute combination of 5-minute parking and 10-minute parking between 8 and 9, 3 to 4. So essentially 31 spaces from the junction through to Reserve Road on the, let's call it the school side of Camberwell Road. 3-hour parking is available between 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and the restrictions are also the same for a Saturday and a Sunday. Again, 3-hour parking. I think you mentioned 7:30 to 10:30. So it would allow them because the school drop-off pickup restrictions only apply Monday through to Friday. So there is, let's call it medium-term parking available on a Saturday and Sunday on Camberwell Road directly in front of the school and the Uniting Church.
Thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
No questions, Chair, but ready to move a motion when the time is right.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne-Smith. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Wondering if officers might be able to explain exactly what is meant by Clause 4. I'm finding it a little ambiguous or perhaps lacking in transparency.
In respect to my statement earlier, Part 4 of the resolution.
Yes, no, sorry. I'm seeking further clarification as to what the intent is of Part 4 of the resolution. I note your comments earlier.
Part 4 is effectively seeking to consider the permanent nature of Reserve Road in whatever form it may be in the context of a master plan for the Camberwell Civic Precinct area. So at that juncture, it may consider either a permanent closure, which would then commence a statutory process, or alternatives that have been raised tonight and any of the other treatments that may go associated with those.
Thank you. And a second question, if I may, through you, Chair. I'm wondering at what point officers believe that a temporary closure ought to become permanent, or whether there is a risk that it may be permanently temporary. Does it have a lifespan?
Through you, Chair, my understanding of the Road Management Act in this case allows for a temporary treatment to stay in place for a significant amount of time. There's no upper limit in a sense of what that may mean. So it can continue on a temporary basis.
And a follow-up, if I may, Chair, do officers have an opinion as to what period of time might be reasonable for a temporary closure to be temporary before requiring a statutory process or something to come back through the chamber?
Thank you, through you, Chair. given the risks that existed at the time of the closure, if they continue to remain, and then we would imagine that the temporary closure should continue to abate those risks and prevent that from reoccurring. There is no view at the moment that the school campuses will change, that risk will continue. So should the road reopen, those risks would then come back.
Thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
I'm ready to move the motion if the time's right.
We have additional questions. Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. For me, I only have one question, and the answer to this question is what's convincing me that the officer's recommendation is the right one to move. Table 1 and Table 2 on page 147 show the occupancy or the spaces available during the period that we surveyed. And to me, it looks like at no time, number one, the question is, are these worst case scenarios, do we think? And number two, at no time are there less than 20% of spaces available. I just want to clarify, is that's what that table is showing. So what we're saying is, at any time, there are at least 20% of available spaces, allowing for the fact that people may have to walk a little bit further, especially the elderly, and I acknowledge that. That's what we heard. But at all times, there are at least 20% of spaces available. Should I interpret it that way?
Through you, Chair. Yes, what we've done with the surveys is identified the worst possible times. So at all other times, there is a lot more parking available than what we've actually got in the table. And we also looked at a Tuesday, Wednesday, which are typically busy weekdays. And if we did the surveys on a Monday or a Friday, we would find that there would be even more parking available by virtue of some people working from home and rostered days off, etc. So this is the worst case scenario typically.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, through you, Chair. This has been a difficult issue for me to listen through. I very much appreciate the safety of the children, but having worked with a lot of older people, I also hear that it's very difficult and the road closure has affected a lot of people, many of whom might attend these weekly social group sessions, and they might be very, very important to them.
Councillor Ibuki, is there a question?
So my question is it possible for us to support the older people who attend some of these classes through our other department? Our community strengthening, community support teams are very good at scaffolding care. Would we be able to have our teams reach out to them perhaps to see if there might be some types of community transport? Places like Eastern Volunteers helps people to get to social activities. Would that be possible?
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I might refer to the Acting Director of Community Services, Fiona Brown.
Yes, we can definitely investigate that, knowing that in order to be eligible for our own transport services, you need to be registered with My Aged Care. But I would be very happy to explore and to see what options might be available. Yes.
Councillor Osborne-Smith, you foreshadowed a motion earlier.
Yes, I'd propose to move the motion as it's drafted on screen.
To assist the mover, is there a seconder? Councillor Franco?
Happy to second.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? There is none. Councillor Osborne-Smith, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, if I may, Chair. Thank you very much to the council officers for this report and for their thorough investigation of this tricky issue for many of us in this community. Thank you also to our presenters tonight, Mary, Elizabeth, Stephanie, Peter and others from the various user groups of the Uniting Church who genuinely feel aggrieved by the closure of the road, and we do appreciate at this horseshoe here today amongst fellow councillors the issues that your constituents face in their activities at the Uniting Church. But I do wish to say that the officer's recommendation, I believe, is logical, it's reasonable, it's simple, and it's very well researched and considers all issues and stakeholders, and I believe adequately addresses the ongoing safety of the primary school and its students. It provides a good range of parking measures in the vicinity to help respond to the loss of some car parking, and it has proven to be a relatively uncontroversial issue for over 6 months now, with a large drop in complaints as people have adapted to the new arrangements. There will, of course, be future opportunities to present submissions as we move through the master planning phase of the Civic Park and, if appropriate, the permanent closure of this road. So we can invite our public to make those submissions at the right time then. I'd commend this motion to my fellow councillors. Thank you very much.
Councillor Franco, noting this is not opposed, do you wish to speak as the seconder?
Just one comment in addition to, if I might, just to reiterate the point that the Director made about the development of the Camberwell Civic Master Plan and that coming before Council, hopefully in the next couple of months, and the opportunities for further consultation that might allow, that would allow. Thank you.
I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? All those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. Thank you to everyone in attendance tonight. We'll now be moving to item 4.1, which will be a lengthy discussion of arts exhibition policy. You're welcome to stay if you would like. Item 4.1 will be introduced by Sue Chan, Manager Arts, Culture and Economic Development, and it consists of the Burundara Exhibition Policy, and Jackie Chan. Did you say Jackie Chan? Jackie Gatt.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. At the Services Delegated Committee meeting on 16th of June 2025, Council endorsed the draft Burundara Exhibition Policy for community consultation. The consultation process received 56 survey responses, 4 written submissions, with 40 participants attending drop-in and engagement sessions. The Burundara Arts Advisory Committee has also considered the policy and provided additional feedback. The Burundara Exhibition Policy being presented tonight for adoption has been updated to reflect this feedback. A high-level summary of the amendments include clarified language around decision-making, noting the term community standards has been removed and replaced with clearer objective language aligned with the policy statement, principles, legal obligations and Council's broader policy framework. This change was made in response to concerns that the term was vague and potentially undermined transparency in decision-making. Amendments also include a strengthened focus on community connection and inclusion, noting the policy now more explicitly affirms the role of the arts in fostering empathy, inclusion and shared experiences, reflecting strong community support for programming that embraces diverse perspectives. Amendments include a refined risk management framework, and updates to Appendix 1 provide clearer steps for assessing and responding to artworks with potentially sensitive content in line with formal escalation protocols. The policy further reinforces Council's commitment to freedom of expression while ensuring artworks comply with legal and policy standards, and reflects minor editorial improvements made to improve clarity, readability and cohesion throughout the document. Importantly, the policy's principles ensure that our exhibition programs are not only of high artistic quality, but also reflective of Boroondara's diverse community. They support inclusion by encouraging exhibitions that tell local stories, including those of migrant communities, LGBTQIA+ individuals and people with disabilities, and by engaging community members in co-curation and consultation processes. The Boroondara Exhibition Policy provides a clear and intentional framework to guide future exhibitions, ensuring the voices, stories and aspirations of our community are not only celebrated, but meaningfully embedded within Council's broader cultural program. Following endorsement from the Services Delegated Committee tonight for the Boroondara Exhibition Policy, next steps include implementation by officers, and Council officers will apply the policy's principles and procedures to guide the planning, selection and presentation of exhibitions across Council-owned facilities and public spaces. Next steps will include internal training and communication, so relevant staff will be briefed on the policy to ensure consistent understanding and application. Public access and community notification will also follow, as the adopted policy will be uploaded to Council's website to ensure transparency and accessibility for the community. Additionally, Council officers will write to community members who participated in the consultation process to advise them of the adopted policy. The policy will be reviewed and updated as necessary to ensure its continued relevance and effectiveness in 3 years from endorsement. The recommendation is as read on the screen.
There are no public submissions on this matter, so we will move directly to questions of officers. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Noting that no one on the floor has raised a question, I might raise a short series of questions. Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Sue. I just wanted to clarify a couple of concerns I have with the policy. It refers to art as high risk, but it doesn't define high risk. It also doesn't include a risk matrix guide for staff to assess sensitive works. And I'd like to understand if a definition should be included and a risk matrix could be developed.
The policy doesn't include a risk matrix. That's an operational decision of councils, and this assessment is something that officers do every day. How we address it is to look at what is proposed, and then we work with the artists to address their ideas. The idea of this policy is to clearly articulate how council would work with artists to present their ideas, and where those ideas might need sensitive management, a process on how we would deal with that. So it doesn't include a risk management matrix in it. That's an operational matter.
To ground the councillors in the intent of the policy, are you able to give us an example, perhaps, of a high-risk artwork or exhibition?
high-risk artworks are those ones where the subject matter may have unintended consequences on our audiences. So if an artist wants to talk about subjects such as sexual assault, we might want to consider the impact that has on people who may have experienced that. So it doesn't mean that we won't present that necessarily. It might mean how we would make sure that the audience understands the context of this work. It may result in us showing the work in a sensitive way, remembering that the Hawthorn Arts Centre, where the gallery sits, is a public building where people of all ages come through. So it's not a gallery, standalone gallery context, which is a really important consideration for our civic collection and how we display it. It makes sure that if we see works like that, and if the topic is about a topic that's really important to our community, doesn't mean we censor it and we don't present it. It just means that we identify it, we work with the artists to understand the messaging that they want to convey, we work with the community to make sure that that reaches that community in a way that's appropriate. So that would be an example I would see of a high-risk artwork where we might want to consider very carefully the unintended consequences on our community. We can't foreshadow what people walk around with their background, but we need to be sensible to that.
I know the policy outlines that an artwork is identified to be potentially sensitive to the extent that it may include one or a number of moral, political, racial, religious, sexist, language, or other sensitive grounds. Are these distinctions necessary, and what would be the implications of removing them?
I think when there are works that are, one of the things that we learnt in developing this policy is clarity for our community. So giving examples is really important. They're not conclusive. It's not that the list is the end. What the policy does talk about is subjectivity and judgment making. So we put words down and then someone will interpret them, whether it's counsellors or whether that's officers. That's just how policies work. I think when we make lists like this, they're indicative lists, which helps convey the meaning. They're not absolute.
Who has final authority in cases where staff, senior management, or councillors may disagree on the presentation of an artwork?
So the policy purpose is to say that once the council adopts this policy, it will be officers who will make the decision. So it's the director. Yes, the senior officer, the director makes a decision.
And how would an artist appeal or contest the disallowance of their work? So what recourse do they currently have?
So in terms of how council supports exhibition programs, officers, our curators, work very closely with the artists. So it's not people apply and we say yes or no. It's a lengthy process of working through with artists. And that's the support we provide to artists to show their work in a way that's meaningful to our community. Where there are subjects where we may disagree, the agreements with all our artists say that council makes the final decision. If they're not happy with that, obviously we would work that through and explain our case. They have the right to disagree with us, to appeal to the officers for review and explanation. If they're not happy with that, then there's further appeal to external bodies like the Ombudsman. So we do have a complaints process. We hope not to arrive at that because our approach is to work with artists to showcase their work and reach the community audiences there.
Is there a reason that shouldn't be included in the policy itself?
So the policy isn't an isolated policy that stands on its own. It connects with a lot of other council policies like the Burundara Community Plan as the highest order strategy, but it also connects with lots of other council principles. So we do have a formal complaints policy that council has adopted, and that would be the formal process that we would connect with.
The policy principles, how do they actively support underrepresented groups? So I'm thinking especially queer, culturally diverse, disabled artists. Is there a way we could embed and publish targets or benchmarks to ensure diversity is measured and reported?
So again, the policy connects with the other council policies. So the Burundara Community Plan is our highest order policy. So all the commitments we make to the diverse community, reflecting our community, are all outlined in those high order policies. Where the exhibition program is presented to the Arts Advisory Committee each year, as officers, the curators are working through that for commentary and feedback. We're really happy to report to Council on an annual basis, if Council pleases, about the artists that we're representing through that program by gender, by ethnicity, by other identifications, I would say. If Council wishes to have that report, that's not a problem at all.
Is there a reason the policy doesn't make a hierarchy of response measures? So under step 3, take action, when we're dealing with highly sensitive artwork, it gives 3 possible outcomes: not proceeding with the display of the artwork, proceeding with the display, or a communication plan. Would it not be better to include in there that a disallowance is the least preferred option? Because at present it's the first option.
It is our preferred option that we work with the artists to present their work. So it's not again, if I want to reiterate the process for officers, the curators work with an artist with the intent of showing their work. It's not our primary intent to cancel their work. So that would be our last course of action.
The working with the artist process, is that articulated in the policy?
The policy talks about what the aim of the exhibition program is, which is to support artists to freely make work, to share that work with our community. It commits to supporting artists' freedom of expression. So there's a lot of positive statements in about what this policy is setting out to do.
Okay, and potentially my last question, which is to just clarify in my mind the entire process from where to go. I think 12 to 24 months in advance, you're sort of working with artists to identify possible exhibitions. You identify someone who wants to do a subject relating to a war in perhaps the Middle East that could be highly sensitive. What does the process look like for you in the practical terms rather than the policy terms?
So I should just clarify, there are a lot of different ways that we engage with visual artists to present their work. Part of it, we do have a strong community exhibition program as well, which is through an exhibition of interest process. In terms of the curated process, which is, I think, what you're talking about possibly, in terms of difficult subject matters, they will always appear in the artist's world. That's what we want artists to do, to present us with ideas, to provoke new ideas, to encourage ways of thinking and looking. I think one of the things that we need to deal with as curators, as arts managers, is making sure that that artwork reaches an audience that it intends. There's no point in putting on artwork that nobody will see because it's so alienating and confronting. So that's the premise. In terms of challenging issues, what is challenging now, which is about war, about the suffering that is in the world through war in the Middle East. I think that these are no different to other, and I'm sorry to say this, it sounds not right in terms of its gravity, but we've always had difficult issues to face as a community. So how do we deal with that in a way that doesn't fracture our community more, but brings them together to talk about difficult issues? That's something Councillor Baillieu, that we would need to work through sensitively and carefully. And this is what the policy does. It provides a transparent process in which the subject matter comes forward. We look at it and we say, this is causing a lot of debate in the community. It's dividing a lot of our community. What, as officers, looking through the process, do we need to do? We need to work with the artists and say, what is your intent here? How can we communicate this intent that speaks to some of the other principles, which is about reflecting our community, presenting a safe space for discussion. That's not to say it's not robust, but a safe space for collective discussion. So we would work through all of those things. If it's possible, then we would say we might put up some signage, we might develop an education program with the artists to say, this is how we talk to our audiences. We might put up warning signs, we might prepare a Q&A, we might prepare some statements for the media in case it blows up, and these things do blow up from time to time, we've seen it. Or in the last resort, if it's impossible for us to present this artwork in a safe manner, then we would talk to the artists about a possible cancellation.
I might give other councillors a chance to ask questions now. Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I'd like to ask how you assess exhibitions so that you know that they are challenging enough for us to elicit thought and responses from the community, but they do not cross the line. So what are some of the mechanisms that you use to try to measure what we can show and what might be, as it's stated in the policy, highly sensitive?
I think one of the things that's important that this policy says is that there is some subjectivity in it, and human judgment, often maligned, is one of our strongest tools, and I think that's just something that we should all remember. But in terms of us working with artists, one of the biggest things that we need to do, and this is why this policy is important, is to create trust for the artists to work with council. That's one of the biggest things for us to bridge, because artists spend all their time thinking about their work, making work, and for them to entrust that work to a space like ours, wanting to show it, because they would need to believe that we can help them present their ideas. So that's one of the ways that we can do it. I would say how we address that is from the positive element rather than the negative element. In terms of how do we have those difficult conversations, artists are really at the coalface of that. They understand where it is challenging. For most of the artists that we work with, their primary objective is to communicate, to connect with other people. So it's not just to alienate. And I think that's an important thing for us to all remember.
Sorry, just one more question through you, Chair. Have there been many examples in the past where we have withdrawn exhibitions because the material was deemed to be too sensitive?
I think there have been incidences, a recent one, for example, where we have worked with an artist to say, perhaps this work is not the right work to show now because of the context it sits in. And I think this is something we all know, that our values change from time to time. Blasphemy was an illegal thing that has been changed. So our values do change. Nudity has been around for a long time, and sometimes it was not okay. Remember all those fig leaves that came out and covered all the naked statues. So values do change from time to time. There are things that have come that we're increasingly aware of, such as safety of children and protecting vulnerable children. So where the work that we worked with the artists or the collector not to show was one where the work was made in a time where the dignity of the sitter doesn't meet contemporary standards anymore. So that's one where we negotiated with them to say, we'd love to show all these other works in the collection, but this one perhaps doesn't meet the current standards, and would they agree to change that? And they do. So this policy is built on years of organising exhibitions and reflects back on that experience. And the improvement that this is for the community is now we have a transparent and clear process when we are making those calls.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you. Through you, art's always about the stuff on the border, isn't it? It's never about the majority stuff. Acknowledging that we have a diverse community that has diverse beliefs and we want to challenge but not offend, I'm interested in a specific area and how you would respond. How about a work of art that brings up an issue that is difficult for our community, for some in our community, or many in our community, such as questioning whether there are more than two genders? How would you respond to this, especially when the majority of our community may see any restriction as censorship, or in fact going against their beliefs that there are only two genders?
We have an exhibition on at the moment at the Hawthorn Arts Centre which celebrates sexual diversity, would I say? So I think this is happening, you know, and the community choose to come and celebrate that, come to the artist talk and hear about it. There are members of our community represented in that exhibition who are interviewed and talking about their background and sharing their stories. So this is happening already, Councillor Pattis. We are sharing a diversity of stories. Not everyone agrees with that. I mean, very often we show artworks and some people might come in and say, oh, my child could have done that, as another example of a diverse set of views. So we do show artwork, and it's not that everyone who sees it agrees with what's going on. All our artworks, exhibitions come with notes. We do provide artist talks. We have an education program that comes with it. So it's not just an exhibition that is like a UFO that drops in at the Hawthorn Arts Centre. There's a lot of other material that comes with each exhibition.
Sorry, through you, Chair, I actually gave a specific example. It probably needs a yes or no. So I'm looking for whether a specific example, which is not talking about gender diversity, but in fact is talking about the opposite, would we look at restricting that, or would we just put up some warning signs that this may offend some people? What would our response be? Because I'm looking for something specific rather than a general statement. Would we censor any of this?
I can't imagine that we would. So we would put up statements explaining, we would organise some information just like we do, artist talks, education programs. We might put up, if we think it's going to upset someone, is that the question? If it upsets people, then
So we would allow it, is
yes.
what you're saying. Thank you.
Councillor Buki.
When the time is right, I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
I have one other question, which is, do we need this policy at all? I know other councils don't have exhibition policies. Sue, I know you worked at Yarra. I think Yarra does a pretty good job when it comes to displaying art that's challenging and diverse, and they don't have a policy at all.
I guess my view about that is that officers need to have some guidance as to what it is this council believes should be a consideration when decisions are being made. Ultimately, you need to have some confidence that our decisions are reflecting to some degree your guidance. It's not a science, it is an art. It is an art, but it at least provides our officers, in this case the director, and also the committee actually, because there will be referrals to the committee, the opportunity to understand what was important to this council in adopting this policy.
Councillor Abuki, I note you foreshadowed a motion. I was going to wonder if we might not suspend standing orders to have a discussion post conversations with officers. But were there any further questions of officers? None. Thank you, Sue. And Jackie? Councillor Abuki?
I'm happy to move to suspend standing orders.
Do you have a seconder? You do not have a seconder to suspend standing orders?
Okay, that's okay. Well, then I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
To assist the mover, is there a seconder?
Very happy to second, thank you.
Is anyone opposed? Councillor Abuki, as the mover of the motion, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd like to begin by thanking our officers for their comprehensive report and for the quality of the work that they continue to deliver across our exhibition program. We're fortunate in Boroondara to have not only a strong curatorial team, but also wonderful exhibition spaces that showcase both local and broader artistic talent. And art is not simply decorative, it's integral to community life. It helps us build connections, express identity, and create opportunities for reflection and dialogue. Exhibitions bring us together, encourage conversation, and often help us to see the world and each other in new ways. And in doing so, they strengthen the cultural fabric of our municipality. This policy is an important step because it provides clarity and guidance for council officers in their curation. It ensures that decisions are made within a clear framework that reflects both community aspirations and council's responsibility to steward resources. By adopting it, we are equipping our officers to continue presenting challenging, inspiring, and relevant exhibitions that meet the needs while at times also challenge us to step beyond our comfort zone. So I commend the work that has gone into this policy, and I look forward to seeing how it supports the continuation of high quality art programming in Boroondara. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'd like to, but I think enough's been said. Again, I just want to thank the officers and acknowledge what an amazing response you've provided to very challenging questions. Thank you.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I'll just make a few brief comments. I very strongly echo the comments that Councillor Abuki made so eloquently. I think it was a very powerful statement. I do think it's important to have this policy in place. I remember a few years ago when there was an incident involving a representative of my ward, and I think the policy has come a long way. I'm very pleased with what the officers have done. Doesn't mean it's exactly what I do. I do share some of the concerns that Councillor Baillieu raised and Councillor Pattis has raised, but on balance, I think we've come a long way. It's very positive, and I'm going to support Councillor Abuki's motion. Thanks to all for what you've done. Thank you.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's very, very important that we have guidelines for the officers. I think the guidelines are good guidelines. We talk about being able to challenge, being able to question things, being able to question without seeking, of course, to offend, and providing an environment where people can understand that it is art, after all. And may I use the example of slavery as something that was something that people accepted, even, all three religions. Slavery was something that was part of those belief systems thousands of years ago. It's no longer accepted by the community. with human rights and so forth. So someone along the way had to challenge that. People's views had to be challenged, and people had to started to question. I think art is a fantastic opportunity to question things, especially things that may be currently enshrined in law, but they should not be vehicles for hate, and they should not be vehicles for racism and discrimination. And I think we're providing the right sort of environment where we can present challenging and difficult topics. So I commend this policy.
Would any other councillor like to speak? I will speak in opposition to the motion. I think this policy is dangerously ambiguous. I question the legitimacy of not including a definition of high risk and not including a risk matrix. Whilst I was up here chairing the last meeting, I packed together a risk matrix in a couple of seconds, and it articulates the legal, reputational, safety, but also equity risks that should be factored into each decision. I think referring artists to the complaints policy is fine, provided that process is stipulated in the policy itself, because I don't know that it's fair to expect an artist to understand that there's a recourse in another policy if it's not referenced in this particular policy. It bothers me that the delegation and decision-making authorities aren't stipulated in this policy clearly. It bothers me that the affirmative action elements are not articulated clearly, even though I acknowledge the staff do incredibly good work in that space. I think it should be in there. I think the policy fails to make clear that a disallowance should be the least preferred option in any assessment. At present, it leaves it completely open, and just on terms of an order of priority, a disallowance is the first option. I'm not thrilled with this definition included in the policy, and an artwork is identified to be potentially sensitive. This may be on one or a number of moral, political, racial, religious, sexist, language, or other sensitive grounds. I think these distinctions are probably unnecessary. Sexist bothers me to the extent that there are active anti-trans lobbyists working on shutting down queer and trans art on sexism grounds across the country. We saw that occur in Yarra Council very recently. It's not clear to me that language is a necessary component. Moral and political seem to cover everything in existence. I appreciate racial may come into conflict with the historical context, which Councillor Pattis has articulated very thoughtfully. And I appreciate there are contexts in which religious may be sensitive in the extreme. I suspect that this would be improved substantially by a deferral and a bit of time tidying up some of those elements, but I'm willing to be persuaded tonight if it's viewed that my concerns are wholly unnecessary or over the top. I'm just very, very reluctant to implement any form of censorship that later drags us into accusation of culture wars and things like that, and I worry that this may be the prelude for that. But I will leave it up to my fellows to either vote in favour or against, should they wish to go for a deferral motion, should this motion fail. Councillors, are there any final councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Fren Pereira.
Through you, Chair. What would be the period before this would come back for a review in the ordinary course of events?
3 years.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
I was just going to raise one small point that I think addresses one of your concerns, if that's appropriate. And that is, so I'm just trying to find the right words here. Yes. Bear with me. can't bring up the item, but I think it was about clause 4.1, which in my reading of the policy clearly stated that it enabled for the, oh, sorry, I can't find the words. Why is this not working? Yeah. Sorry, Chair, I can't find the right words, which make it hard to explain my point. I think I'll just leave the motion to stand or fall on its merits. Thank you.
In that case, if no further councillor wishes to speak to the motion, we will return to Councillor Ibuki for a right of reply.
Thank you. One of the things that I consider with this motion and with the arts policy is its relation to our community plan, our community voice, and the fact that our art, our exhibition space, and the work that our exhibitions try to do is to strengthen and to build our community. So it is this association and relationship that our curatorial program has with our mandate to build, strengthen community that has guided me in supporting this exhibition policy. Like anyone, I'm fairly versed with the arts. I understand different contexts. I can be fairly progressive in my tastes, but I also understand that this policy is grounded in community art. And I think that we need to be cognizant that we are using ratepayers' money in our council spaces to put on exhibitions that may elicit perhaps some discomfort with our residents, some debate, but on the whole, we are here to show art that uplifts and builds harmonious community throughout Boroondara. That's the purpose of the art that we have here. That's not to say that we are pushing boundaries, and we have done that. I'm sure that the curatorial team have received feedback where people haven't been happy with some of the exhibitions that we have hosted, and some of the exhibitions I have looked at and I have been quite impressed with what we have shown and how we have pushed community boundaries. But I think we need to have a balance here, and it is because we tie in all of our art and our programming with our other policies that ground our work as a council that responds to and supports our community. So that's why I will support this policy, and also being on the Arts Advisory Committee, I have some, line of sight in some of the difficult work that our team does in working with artists, and they do need some mechanism that guides process, that helps them to negotiate how we manage and work with artists. And I do believe and I support the willingness of our staff to work with artists, to allow them to have a voice, to distribute their message, and you know, to have a positive impact on our community. It's been one of the most pleasurable elements of my time so far in council, watching what our arts team manages to achieve in terms of the programs, the music, the exhibitions. There has been a wonderful diversity in the material that they have presented, and I truly believe that, you know, we are doing some good work in bringing people, different types of people together. The work has been varied, and, you know, I really just think that the team deserves a good policy that might continue to evolve, but helps them to do their work better. So I urge my fellow councillors to support this motion and the policy. Thank you.
I'll now put the matter to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. Councillors, we'll now move to items of general business. Are there any matters of general business? There are none. We'll now move to matters of urgent business. Are there any matters of urgent business? There are none. We'll now move to matters of confidential business. There is one item of confidential business. Could I please have a motion to close the meeting to the public in accordance with section 66(2)(a) and subsection 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss item 4.4 North East Link legal matter. This agenda item is confidential information for the purposes of section 3(1) echo of the Local Government Act 2020 because it includes legal privileged information, being information to which legal professional privilege or client legal privilege applies. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion that we close business to the general public and go into confidential.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Friend Pereira.
Seconded.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? No. I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. I declare the Service Delegated Committee meeting closed to the public. To members of the community watching tonight's proceedings, the live stream will cease while the confidential business is being discussed, and we will reopen the meeting to the public at the conclusion of the discussion. To members of the community watching tonight's proceedings, welcome back to live streaming of the council meeting. Before I close the meeting, I want to thank you all who have joined us this evening, and I declare the Service Delegated Committee meeting closed.